The Bahmani Sultanate was a Muslim state of the Deccan in South India and one of the great medieval Indian kingdoms. Bahmanid Sultanate was the first independent Islamic kingdom in South India. The empire was established by Turkic or Brahmin convert Alauddin Hasan Bahman Shah. He founded the dynasty by revolting against the Delhi Sultanate of Muhammad bin Tughlaq. Nasir-ud-Din Ismail Shah, who had revolted against the Delhi Sultanate, stepped down on that day in favour of Zafar Khan, who ascended the throne with the title of Alauddin Bahman Shah. His revolt was successful, and he established an independent state on the Deccan within the Delhi Sultanate's southern provinces. The Bahmani capital was Ahsanabad between 1347 and 1425, when it was moved to Muhammadabad. The Bahmani contested the control of the Deccan, with the Hindu Vijayanagara Empire to the south. The Sultanate reached the peak of its power during the Vizierate of Mlpkr. The South Indian Emperor Krishna Devaraya of the Vijayanagara Empire defeated the last remnant of Bahmani Sultanate power, after which the Bahmani Sultanate collapsed. After 1518, the Sultanate broke up into 5 states: Nizam Shahi of Ahmednagar, Khutun Shahi of Golconda, Barad Shahi of Bidar, Imad Shahi of Berar, Adil Shahi of Bijapur. They are collectively known as the Deccan Sultanates. History. Tajuddin Firuz Shah of the Bahmani Sultanate's Firman, Ahmad Shah I Wali. After the Sultan, Muhammad Tughlaq left Daulatabad, Maharashtra, the city was conquered by Zafar Khan in 1345. Independence from Delhi was immediately declared and Khan established a sultanate of his own. Zafar Khan's origin is too obscure to admit or being traced. He is believed to be Turkic, who was a servant of a Brahmin astrologer named Gangu of Delhi, or Zafar Khan was a Brahmin convert, and from that source the dynasty got the name Bahmani. He had earlier participated in a mutiny of troops in Gujarat. He probably did not feel too safe in Daulatabad, so he shifted his capital 2 years later to Gulbarga. This town is located in a fertile basin. Zafar Khan, also known as Bahman Shah, became the founder of an important dynasty which ruled the Deccan for nearly 2 centuries. He had to fight various remnants of Muhammad Tughlaq's troops, as well as the Hindu rulers of Orissa and Warangal, who had also expanded their spheres of influence as soon as Muhammad had left the Deccan. The Rajas of Vijayanagar had established their empire almost at the same time as Bahman Shah had founded his sultanate. They now emerged as his most formidable enemies. Bahman Shah's successor, Muhammad Shah, killed about 500,000 people in his incessant campaigns until he and his adversaries came to some agreement to spare prisoners of war as well as the civilian population. Despite their many wars, Sultan Muhammad Shah and his successors could not expand the Sultanate very much. They just about managed to maintain the status quo. Around 1400, the rulers of Vijayanagar, in good old Rajamandala style, even established an alliance with the Bahmani Sultan's northern neighbours, the Sultans of Gujarat and Malwa, so as to check his expansionist policy. But in 1425, the Bahmani Sultan subjugated Warangal and thus reached the east coast. However, only a few years later, the new Surya Shah dynasty of Orissa challenged the Sultanate and contributed to its downfall. In the 15th century, the capital of the Bahmani Sultanate was moved from Gulbarga to Bidar. The new capital, Bidar, was at a much higher level than Gulbarga and had a better climate in the rainy season. But it was also nearly 100 miles further to the northeast and thus much closer to Warangal. Bidar soon was as impressive a capital as Gulbarga had been. Afanasy Nikitin, a Russian traveller who spent 4 years in the Sultanate from 1470 to 1474, left us a report which is one of the most important European accounts of life in medieval India. He highlighted the great contrast between the enormous wealth of the nobility and the grinding poverty of the rural population. The most important personality of this Bidar period of the Bahmani Sultanate was Mlpkr, who served several sultans as prime minister and general from 1461 to 1481. He reconquered Goa, which had been captured by the rulers of Vijayanagar. The Sultanate then extended from coast to coast. Gawan also introduced remarkable administrative reforms and controlled many districts directly. State finance was thus very much improved, but his competent organization ended with his execution, ordered by the Sultan as the result of a court intrigue. After realizing his mistake, the Sultan drank himself to death within the year, thus marking the beginning of the end of the Bahmani Sultanate. After Gawan's death, the various factions at the Sultan's court started a struggle for power that was to end only with the dynasty itself. Indigenous Muslim courtiers and generals were arranged against the aliens Arabs, Turks and Persians. The last Sultan, Mahmud Shah, no longer had any authority and presided over the dissolution of his realm. Sri Krishna Devaraya of Vijayanagar defeated the last remnant of Bahmani power. The governors of the four most important provinces declared their independence from the Bahmani ruler one after another: Bijapur, Ahmednagar, Berar, Bidar and Golconda. Although the Bahmani sultans lived on in Bidar until 1527, they were mere puppets in the hands of the real rulers of Bidar, the Shahis, who used them so as to put pressure on the other usurpers of Bahmani rule. Bijapur proved to be the most expansive of the successor states and annexed Bidar. Ahmednagar and Golconda retained their independence and finally joined hands with Bijapur in the great struggle against Vijayanagar. Ahmednagar annexed Berar before losing to Mughals. Embroiled in incessant fighting on the Deccan, Bijapur lost Goa to the Portuguese in 1510 and was unable to regain this port, even though attempts at capturing it were made up to 1570. The armies of Vijayanagar were a match for the armies of Bijapur. However, when all the Deccan Sultanates pooled their resources, Vijayanagar suffered a crucial defeat in 1565. Subsequently, the Deccan Sultanates succumbed to the great Mughals. Ahmednagar, being the northernmost, was annexed first. Bijapur and Golconda survived for some time, but were finally vanquished by Aurangzeb in 1686–7. The Deccan Sultanates owed their origin to the withdrawal of the Sultanate of Delhi from southern India, and they were finally eliminated by the great Mughals, who had wiped out the Sultanate of Delhi some time earlier. The role which these Deccan Sultanates played in Indian history has been the subject of great debate. Early European historians, as well as later Hindu scholars, have highlighted the destructive role of these sultanates, which were literally established on the ruins of flourishing Hindu kingdoms. Muslim historians, by contrast, have drawn attention to the cultural achievements of the sultanates in art and architecture. Indeed, Anastasia Nikitin's report praised Bijapur as the most magnificent city of India. Culture. Later rulers of the dynasty believed that they descended from Bahman, the mythological figure of greater Iranian legend and lore. The Bahmani sultans were patrons of the Persian language, culture and literature, and some members of the dynasty became well versed in that language and composed its literature in that language. These sultanates certainly contributed to the further development of India's regional cultures. Some of these sultanates made important contributions to the development of the regional languages. The sultans of Bijapur recognized Marathi as a language in which business could be transacted. The sweeping conquest of India by Islamic rulers, epitomized by the far-flung military campaigns of the Delhi sultans, was thus in direct contrast with the regional aspect of the above-mentioned ventures. The coexistence of Islamic rule with Hindu rule in this period added a further dimension to this regionalization. The craftspersons of Bidar were so famed for their inlay work on copper and silver that it came to be known as Bidri. List of Bahmani Shahs.